So my name is Candace Zubernaut, if you don't already know me. I'm the founder of the Christian Closet. So we do online counseling and coaching and spiritual direction and Enneagram coaching. So we meet with people all over the world, which is really amazing to get to do that. People that are like, I don't know if I'm gay, but like I keep having dreams, to for same-sex relationships, all the gamut, right? I'm also the founder of Gloriously Queer. It's a 2-day event. We just had our first one this last summer, and we're having our second one in Grand Rapids in 2020, which is now, I guess, so September. I truly believe that we most accurately reflect the glory of God when we are living into our LGBTQ identity. And so that 2-day event is just that, figuring out how we can more easily and freely reflect our queer selves in the world. Let's see, I have been with my wife Crystal for 15 years. We met in seminary, so that was a wild ride. Right after I went to Moody, which was also a wild ride. We've been married for 6 years, so we were together 8 years when we got married. So there are many, many years of being closeted. We were closeted for 5 years. Many years of feeling pretty hopeless. So we got married, and then we wanted to have kids, and I told her we have to do the marriage and then the kids, right? So we're going to do at least one thing traditional in our lives. So we have 5.5-year-old boy-girl twins, and it's amazing. I never thought that I could be a mom, and I love it. And we just got a puppy at Christmas, so now we have 3 babies, it feels like. It's strange to think about it. As I was preparing for today's workshop, I was like, okay, so when did I start coming out? And I was like, did the math. I thought, oh my God, I have started slowly coming out almost 20 years ago, which feels really crazy. That makes me feel really old. It also helps me understand why it was the way that it was. And I wish that I could say a ton has changed. It's, I think, probably still just as hard as it was then to come out. Even though we now have Instagram and lots of lesbians with jeans on Instagram, it's still incredibly hard. I fully came out of the closet 10 years ago. And I'd say I have to come out of the closet, I don't know, every couple weeks at least. So I thought, when did you come out of the closet is like this question, like, here is this dot in time when I came out, done. You're shaking your head, you know that it is continual everywhere you go. You have to come out. When I think about themes of coming out, I mean, as a queer person, I think it's one of the most important, right? To live in the darkness. Like, you aren't dark, but it is dark. And I don't know about you, but for me, during those years of being closeted, it impacted my mental health. I definitely ate more than I should, drank more than I should, slept more than I should. It was really, really hard. Same with my wife. We kind of lost the things that made us shine for a bit. And even today, all those years later, when we look back on the things that we still have to work through, it was things that happened during our time being closeted, right? It wasn't any of the pain or any of the losses that we endured coming out, which is kind of interesting, right? I want to know how many of you still have someone significant in your life that you need or want to come out to at some point? Okay, yeah. Which makes sense, which is why you're probably here. I remember, I don't know if you feel this way, but like it almost felt obsessive. Anywhere I went, it was hard to think outside of, I'm gay and they don't know. to go to a party, it wasn't like, oh yay, what like side dish am I gonna bring or something, right? It was like, okay, someone's gonna ask me how I am, and what do I say? Or to go home for Christmas break. I remember my dad, he wanted me to meet someone so badly. He's like, hey, here's $20. I was in grad school. He's like, here's $20. Remember so-and-so you dated? They're also home for break. And like, you guys could go out. And I was like, oh, I wish I could tell him it wasn't like a money issue, but I will take the $20, Those were dark times. And I think that there's also like an expectation of like how we should come out. And I wonder if any of you feel that, like this expectation of I should do it face to face, or I should do it in person. I'd love to hear if any of you feel that. Like, you can speak it out. Yeah, okay. It's strange, or maybe not strange, but I think when I was coming out, it was just so messy that there wasn't an expectation. I think I was just trying to survive. But nowadays, I think because, this person on Instagram, or just go to YouTube, and there's like all these really amazing coming out videos, right? You have the question mark, go to YouTube, and then Google coming out videos. There's like, and I think what I want you to know, like if you don't remember anything that I say today, what I really want you to know is that the question you should be asking is like, what is the easiest, least painful way for me to do this? And that is the most courageous way. It absolutely matters. Like, sure, you might be thinking like, okay, well, my parents will only respond, or my grandma or whoever it is will only respond really well if I come out in this certain way, and if I fly to their house and I sit down with them and see them face to face. And there might be like a small impact how we say it. Like, it doesn't not matter, but it's not going to change it. It's not going to be the thing that changes it from like a really hard, painful experience to like someone becoming affirming. That no matter how you do it, it is courageous. So the least painful, easiest way for you to do this, do it that way. A few months ago, my wife and I like to go to this resort where you can just like pay to use the pool for a day. If you don't have one of those near your home, I'm sorry, because it's really amazing. So there's this amazing pool, and we pay like $20 or whatever, and then they have like an adult spa, and we'd sneak the kids in there a few times, and then people like complain, so we had to stop sneaking them in. So now we take turns. So I'm watching Deacon and Dylan, our kids, in the pool, and like, hey, stop drowning your sister, and no, you can't take a hot dog into the pool, and all of that. And Crystal's at the spa. So she's living it up. I'm momming it up. And this lady starts chatting with the kids and with me. And she's chatting. And then she says, oh, is your husband at the conference? And of course, I have no idea what like the conference is, but obviously I know the answer, no. And I'm laying there in this lounge chair, and I'm like, all right, I was up like 3 times last night because Dylan kept having nightmares, and I'm just trying to get a little bit of a tan, and I don't know who this lady is. Simultaneously, I'm like, this is also like partially what I do for a job. Like I help people come out. So like if anybody's gonna come out in this moment, like it should be me. And I just thought like, I just don't want to. So I just was like, no, and then switched the subject. So I didn't feel bad about it, and I just kind of went on. And then Crystal came out from the spa, and it was my turn to go in. And this lady, she was like a chatterbox. She immediately started talking with Crystal. And then I hear Crystal, my wife, say out loud, yeah, my wife is right over there. and points to me. And I'm just like, okay. This lady's like, why didn't you tell me? I love gay people, you know? And I'm like, that's exactly why I didn't tell you. And it was a moment I could have felt bad, right? I mean, there was exposure. I'm supposed to feel proud. And it wasn't even that I didn't feel proud. It was just that I freaking didn't feel like it. I didn't want to have to even deal with her affirming smile or her story about her, you know, I don't know, gay cousin or whatever it was. And it's super important for each of us to realize that, like, we get to feel free, not only to come out, but also to not come out. It doesn't have to mean that you feel shame. It could just mean that you're a human and that you don't want this person to know that about you, or that you don't want to have to deal with whatever it is that they're going to say or not say to you. I would love to take some time, if you guys could break up into like groups of 2 and just sort of share with each other, I know this is kind of a big question, but fears or questions you have about coming out. And just take a couple minutes and then I'll get us back together. Yeah. To here? Oh. Got it. Sure. Sure. We're gonna do this. We're gonna share. I'm gonna share more of my story. We're gonna go through just a few things that can sometimes be helpful about coming out, and then have a Q&R at the end. Yeah, Q and response. That's at the end. Yeah. Sorry, probably not helpful. Okay. All right, so take a few minutes, break into groups of 2 or 3. All right, everybody, I know it's hard to stop, which is a good sign. There's no pressure to share, of course, but I think a big part of surviving being closeted is getting to hear from one another. I know that I would value to hear from any of you, so would love to hear what did you all talk about? Yeah. Yeah, it's like, I am still me, the person that you loved 5 minutes ago, but somehow, like, you look at me so different. Sure. Yeah. Unless, yeah. It's true. It's like, you just want to have sex with everyone, don't you? Yeah. I like to tell people you're not my type. Yeah, you know, and even, I mean, sometimes, I don't know about you guys, even though I joke like I'm not your type and I'm happily married, sometimes I still internalize that, and even when I go to the gym, I'm like, okay, if people, like, do I look gay because I have tattoos and I usually wear like guys joggers. I'm definitely not wearing yoga pants, so people might think that I'm gay, and everyone's changing, and what if my eyes see someone, and I'm like, I just want to freaking put my stuff in a damn locker, you know, like, so there's like so much energy to it, yeah. Yeah, what do you mean? Can you say more? Sure, it's not like you're like, I was a psychology degree major and now I want to be business. Yeah, it's, once it's said, it's said. Yeah.
Why would you not be able to take that back? But they can maybe, I cannot compare this to other people.
Okay.
I'm not joking.
I,
It's funny, but it's really
yeah.
then my mom, the architecture in a nice work
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of people. I mean, when I first came out, I had enjoyed dating guys, and so I told my mom that I was bi, and come to find out, I'm like, no, I'm definitely super lesbian, you know, um, and not everyone who comes out as bi is on a track to being gay, right? Of course not. Um, or there's plenty of people who are trying to figure out their gender identity, and it gets mixed up with their sexual orientation. Um, and so that freedom can only lie within yourself. But absolutely, I would say that for the most part, our families, it's challenging for them to give us the freedom to really figure that out in a like verbal processing, like, oh, now I'm figuring out more, and now I am, or now I identify as. I think most families have a hard time with that. So. Yeah.
Hello. My name's Taylor. I'm in a mixed orientation marriage, and I'm married to a cisgender heterosexual man who is lovely. But, you know, we've been married for 3 years, and ever since we've been, you know, physically and kind of sexually intimate, things have not fallen into place as I had thought. And I've kind of explored my own sexual identity with a therapist and realized that I'm not straight. And I feel like my fear about coming out is that there's just a lot of weight to whatever, you know, like there's weight to labels in this situation. And I would rather just identify as queer and continue my life until maybe I have a certain knowing, but there's just a lot of implications and consequences for if I come out and how, so.
I want you to know that you're not alone. I don't know if you're alone in this room, but that I know and meet with lots of people in that same space. And you're right, it's a totally different implication for you, your spouse's family. If you have children, your children. So that's a whole other thing. Anybody else want to share? So, oh. Yeah. I didn't quite do this strategy on purpose, but I decided to come out, when I first came out, to the first 2 easiest people. And I would say that's a great strategy to go by, because you're going to need cheerleaders and people who you can call, and who just are like, I am on your side no matter what. So the first person I told was my brother, and his response was like, so you and Crystal like kiss? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, all right, cool. Very classic bro response. The next person I told was my grandmother, who has been my person my whole life, until she passed away. And her response was totally affirming of me, but she thought it would be a good idea if I would just found a gay man and we could get married and have children, and then we could both have our own lives. I don't know what that would have been like. Probably not great. Yeah, kind of strange. I'm guessing in her generation, that's kind of what people did, right? Common in the Philippines. Okay, yeah. She was at our wedding celebrating and all of that. So she eventually let go of that idea. The next 2 people, my parents, they were going to be the hardest for me. They are the kind of people that like have daily quiet times. They had wanted to be missionaries, as Christian as it gets. So my mom and I went on our first mother-daughter trip ever. I was in seminary, and we had this special time, and we went horseback riding. I mean, come on. And I remember telling her, like, there's just so much of me that I want you to know. I wanted to be known by her so badly. And she looked at me, and I thought, okay, here we go. Like, this is the moment. And she said, some things a parent just doesn't need to know. And I mean, it was like, I don't know how I held back the tears, but like my insides just crumbled. Like, not only does my mom not want to know me, but if she thinks she knows what I'm about to say, she's now telling me she never wants to know this, and I don't know what to do next. So I pushed it away as much as I could, and the trip went on, and I went home, and months later, Crystal and I broke up. As you can imagine, being closeted, we broke up a handful of times. And so one of the times that we broke up, I was heartbroken, and I called my mom, and through sobs, I felt like maybe I could tell her, because now it wasn't true anymore, So through sobs, I told her that, I was in a relationship with Crystal, and she was very sweet and told me she loved me and told me she was sorry I was heartbroken. And I thought, like, oh my God, this is going so great. And then, after that conversation came the anger. She was very, very angry. I've never known my mom to be angry before. She was very distant. I'd always felt very close to her. She would call me and read me the Bible and read me the footnotes, which is still kind of funny to me that there's so many people who think the footnotes are as inspired as like the, scripture part. It's kind of weird, but, and probably the most painful thing that she told me was, she asked me not to tell my dad. He had just had a heart attack, and she thought it would kill him. And I was worried also. And so I agreed. I agreed that I wouldn't tell him. And so we lived like that for years. I'd go visit. Sometimes when Crystal and I got back together, we'd even go down and visit my family in San Diego, while my dad didn't know. And then one day, I realized that this is a weird thing to say, and maybe some of you have felt this way, but I had this feeling of like, I'm going to be relieved when my dad finally dies, because I'm so tired of not being myself, and I'm going to feel relieved when I can finally be myself. And my very next thought was, if that happens, I think I will really be like messed up. I do not want to bear that in my life. And so the very next weekend, I booked a trip down to where they were. I waited the whole weekend. Every moment that there was an opportunity, I waited. And I waited. And we were in the car on the way to the airport. And I thought, okay, he's probably going to kick me out of the car. And I could probably hitchhike, or like Lyft wasn't a thing, you know. Or I'll miss my flight, like whatever it is, like I can figure it out. I'll be on the side of the road. Maybe, you know, I'm a pretty resourceful woman. What? The bag was in the trunk, so I guess, yeah, I didn't think that far in advance. I needed new jeans anyways. And so I sat there trembling, and I told him that I was attracted to women and that I was in a relationship. I still, all these years later, can't believe it felt like the most impossible thing that could ever come out of my mouth, to tell my dad that I was gay. And he looked at me and said the most surprising thing that I've ever heard still to this day. And he said, "I love you, and I wish that you didn't have to spend so much time trying to please me. And I know your heart for God, and there's a lot of people in the pews at my church who don't know God as much as you do. And so I trust you, and I'm happy for you." Holy effing yes. Shock, 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 yeah. Pretty much bawled my eyes out, as you can imagine. I mean, how lucky was I, you know, to think about the years that I lived in fear, the immense amount of anxiety and depression I had in my life for years. I sometimes wonder, like, what would have happened if I would have come out to him when I came out to my mom? Like, is it that he needed that time and like his life and his heart changed? Or like, did I like unduly suffer? And I know that I'll never know, but it's a thing that I wonder sometimes, for sure. And I know I talked about this idea of coming out to the easiest people first and having cheerleaders, but that's incredibly important. Because I had people in my life. I had a therapist who was fantastic, and 2 really good friends who knew. And they were texting me like crazy throughout the whole weekend. And I don't know that I could have done it without their like messages of just like, no matter what, we love you. No matter what, like, I am here. No matter what, I will be at your wedding someday. Like, I think each one of us needs at least one voice saying, no matter what. I think the other thing that happens when we're closeted is tunnel vision. I don't know about you, but it can feel, it's like everything closes in and it feels like it's everything. And it's all you can see and all you can feel. And I want you to know that even though that feeling is real, your life is bigger than that. And your life will be bigger than this. I'm lucky enough to have a life that I could not have even imagined. I didn't even hope for it, because why hope for something that was impossible? Why hope for something that I had never seen? I had never seen 2 women married with children. And it felt like it was this huge thing in front of my face. And now to realize like that life is bigger, God is bigger than this. You and your life and the things that you want out of it will be bigger than this. I don't know if any of you have read Amber Cantorna's book on coming out, but if you haven't, you should get it. It's super good. I think it's the best book on coming out that I've read. And she really goes through like checklists of things that are important to have before you come out. There's some obvious things like, make sure that you're not financially dependent on your parents. There can be people, like, it can sort of almost feel like shame, like, I have to come out, I'm not being proud if I don't come out. And I would say, don't let anyone put that on you. There are things to get in order before you come out. And having cheerleaders, being financially dependent, finding a therapist, and being able to tell at least one supportive friend are things to do before you tell anyone that's hard in your life to tell. Excuse me, this is me better. I had this horrible cough. The other thing that I want to say is when we come out, it can be really like, people want to know our theology, right? Like, well, how do you prove this is okay? And I would say try not to do that. Try not to get into those conversations. I like to tell people that there are people who are way smarter than me who have already wrote books about it. And there are people way smarter than me who have already started conferences for it and have YouTube videos about it. And so I point them to specific books and videos that line up with my theology. And if you're really interested in what my theology is, go read this or go watch this, and then I can have a conversation with you about that. But I don't need to exegete this passage for you. Someone already did it way better than I could have. That sticking to your story, even though it's really vulnerable, is the most important thing. And when they say hurtful things, because they will say hurtful things, I will still never forget the hurtful things my mom said to me, even though she loves and affirms me and Crystal and our kids. There's a temptation to hurt back or to try to prove something back, memorize something that's, really smart about the Bible. But I like to think about it like a knife fight. Not that I've ever been in a knife fight. But when I think about if I'm standing with someone and they put a knife in my stomach, to be able to look down and describe the wound to them. To be able to look down and describe what you just said, this is what it feels like to hear that. It's devastating to me to hear you say that. It makes me wonder, blah, 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 that you stick with what you're feeling and your experience than combating what they've said. It's really hard to do. But in an argument, nobody wins, right? Even if you won, you lost. What time are we at right now? 3:30, okay. I'm going to move really quickly through this next part. I do want to leave some time for some questions. I think the last thing to spend time around is grief. That each one of you is probably pretty familiar with grief. And it's really important. Not only to find support as you grieve, but to understand the different grief processes that happen because our families go through it too. So if I would have been able to understand that, I would have been able to know that my mom was stuck in denial and anger for years. And that would have been it wouldn't have made it easier, but I think it would have made it feel a little bit more grounding to know she's grieving. And so when she says this, it's her denial. When she says this, it's her anger. And when our families get stuck in one part of grief, the more that we can share of our lives, the more that it forces them out of that one stage of grief. So when we then deny our true selves and our true story, it keeps them stuck. So to be able to, you can Google it, there's anger and denial and sadness and bargaining. Oh God, that's the last one. Sorry, let's see. Anger, bargaining, depression, shock and denial. I think I got all of them. So spend some time sort of breaking that down in your own life and also in those lives, the people that you love. because it can look different. Like my dad, let me give you $20, go on a date, right? It's sort of, that's a part of grief of not wanting me to be single, bargaining. If I do this, then, right? If I pay for your therapy, then you won't be gay. Now I want you to grab these ropes, these little twine things. I guess they're not really rope. And I want you to hold on to one end, and whoever is sitting next to you, I want them to hold on to the other side of that. So make sure that you're holding on to a rope that at least one person is holding on to the other end. All right, cool. And if you feel comfortable, it would be great to close your eyes. I'm going to close my eyes. And I just want us to take a deep breath in and out. And in and out. And as you breathe, you can just let your body relax. You can let your body relax into the chair that you're sitting in. You can feel your feet on the floor so you know that you're grounded and present but fully relaxed. And you can let your mind just kind of go over your body and find any muscles that are tense, and you can just release them and relax them. And as you continue to breathe, I want you to just gently tug on the end that you're holding on to, just enough so that you can feel the other person on the other end. And as you do that, I want you to remember a time that you went through something really hard. Something that you, at the time, didn't know if you'd get through it. It's probably unrelated to being queer. And now it might seem silly, but I want you to remember that thing that once felt really impossible and hard. And I want you to be able to remember that you got through it. Can you remember how you got through it? Can you remember that you moved past it? That there was once something in your life that felt impossible that you got through. And even if that feels really hard to imagine or to think about, I want you to feel the other person on the other side of the string. For you to be able to know that you are not alone. That there is someone else in this world who's trying to figure out how to come out and how to love themselves. And when you leave QCF and you go home and you feel alone, I want you to remember what it feels like to hold the string, and I want you to remember what it feels like to have someone on the other side of it. And you can take just one more tug on that string to remember what that feels like. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. So, any comments or questions? Thanks for doing that with me, by the way. I know it can be kind of vulnerable. Yeah, general questions. Here, do you want to
Come out the first time, the second time, etc. How do you stay care when you really don't give a shit anymore? Like when you get to a point where you accept yourself to a greater extent than you ever had, and you're still sitting with someone, and you don't have the patience or even the care that you had at the very beginning, the first time you came out. You know, how do you keep your heart humble and willing to walk with them a little bit compared to where you are today, where if you don't, it's fine. You know what I mean?
kind of like, hey, listen, I've already been through all this, and if you don't accept it, have fun. Exactly. Yeah. Sure. I think hearing other people's stories, remembering, when I can remember what it was like. But I think more than that, I want to say, it's okay that you don't. And you can name that. I realize that, like, I'm coming out to you years after I've come out to lots of other people, and so I don't have what I used to have. And so you probably sense, you might be feeling like I'm cynical and I don't care, and it's actually just that I'm tired. So I ask that you forgive me for that, and I don't know that you need to hold that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How do you reconcile having, if you come out and then to, like, say, your secular friends, of still being like a witness to them? I just feel like if I come out, then that Christian image just automatically crumbles. How do you maintain that, of sharing your faith with them after that, if you think that they would think differently of you, even in a worldly situation? And how do you reconcile that, to keep it, to keep your, well, not to keep your image together, but how do you go out there in the world and then say, well, I'm gay and I'm Christian, and this is why I want to share my faith with you?
If I understand your question, I think secular people mostly, especially queer people, secular queer people, look at me with like, what are you doing? Why would you ever still be a Christian? And how would you ever still be a Christian? I think those are the hardest people to talk to. And not in a way that I'm trying to convert them, but just they have no imagination or no context that this can be true, both of these things, right? But I think as I had to deconstruct my faith, the Christian theology that I grew up with didn't quite fit anymore, right? And so that had to really come apart, and I had to build a new one around my reality. And in that, things like being a good witness and converting people, for me, aren't things that I even think about anymore. I think about, like, you will know if I love you if you're sick and I bring you soup. Like, that's how you're going to experience Christ in me, not because I said I'm a thing. And so it's like my faith has gotten much, like, I guess I would say, like, on the ground and dirtier than the verbiage I use. Sorry.
Just a comment.
Yeah.
I also think one of the good parts about this world we're not perfect. One thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people who aren't Christians, and they think that they aren't Christians because it won't work for them, because of something specific, right? And so to be able to deconstruct that, to say, I'm sorry that someone told you that at some point in your life, but it's just not true, right?
It's probably more of a commentary than a question, but just thinking about the question you asked us earlier, in terms of fears of, like, coming out, and I think there's an experience I had relatively recently where I was on the verge of telling this person I know from church, and I I met him years ago back in when I was living in Michigan, and I just kind of messaged him on Facebook, or we were just chatting or whatever. And but then something happened. And I felt was afraid that he had sensed that, and that that he no longer wanted to talk. Like something happened to his Facebook. I thought he had just blocked me, but it turned out he'd actually just deleted his profile. And then, because less than a month later comes up, he's like, yeah, I deleted my profile, and now I'm back because I can't stay away from Facebook. And I was like, oh, it wasn't me after all. But it just brought to my mind just this thinking of okay, that for many straight men, that gay is something to be feared, and that I often am not cognizant of that enough. And so sometimes I think, okay, should I be careful for them? And I think there's some people who would say no, it's their problem, it's not your problem. You don't need to be walking on eggshells around them, and you should be out and proud, and feel free to sort of say whatever, but yeah, it's just one of these things where I am cognizant of just how certain straight men in particular, I think it's always easier talking as a gay man, it's always easier telling a woman, right? They're just generally, oh, great. I mean, I'm stereotyping here. We can go shopping together. And I'll talk to you about it. It's a stereotype, but it is true to a degree. I had this, okay, story time. Just this straight, female friend met in church. I thought she was slightly attracted to me. And I was just like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. And I wasn't ready to come out. And then I came out to her, and then it was just fabulous. And then it was really great for her because she could cuddle with me and not have to worry. And then she just talks to me about all her boyfriends. And so sometimes it's this very stereotypical thing that ends up being true. But with men, it's always this very, with straight men, right? This very, very bizarre thing because many of them are not comfortable enough with their sexuality to know how to respond, right? I'm not necessarily trying to hump you. Maybe I'm attracted to you, but probably not necessarily. You may not be my type, right? And just get over yourself, relax. I haven't changed. If I was going to try to hump you, I could have done it earlier. I'm just joking, but yeah. So it's just I think this constant sort of trying to deal with just how other people perceive you and perceive gay writ large, right? Because there's just these constant perceptions out there. I think particularly within the Christian community. I remember one gentleman that I shared within my church, and he was just kind of wait, are we supposed to talk about stuff like this? He just kind of took it in a bizarre manner, but.
That's funny. I think, there's times when I wonder if I am being discriminated against, or if I'm just seeing it through a lens of my internalized homophobia, or it's all about me. Did this person unfriend me because they're homophobic? Oh wait, no, they just aren't on Facebook anymore, right? Or did this person, not service me well at this restaurant because I'm here with my wife? Anybody else? One last comment.
Where it's physically threatening or risky to come out. And not necessarily if you're living there, even if you're living in the US, like myself, with the connectedness of the world now with technology. Get some water.
There is an organization called Rainbow Railroad, and they basically grant people refugee status based on their sexuality. So when it's unsafe for someone to be out in their home country, they help them, and they do have some resources for people from particularly conservative countries and cultures, because that's what they do. So even if you're not a LGBTQ refugee, they do still connect you. They're on Instagram and websites, and it's called Rainbow Railroad.
So I was just saying, I've met many Arab gay men, or a number of Arab gay men in recent years, and they recognize how dangerous it can be in their various societies to be open, but because, you know, that same technology that you mentioned that could be dangerous also enables them to connect with each other, right? And so to the degree that they find each other and can find safety among other Arab gay men or among just other gay men, period. Like, so, I mean, years ago I was in China, and for whatever reason there's a bunch of Arabs hanging out in southern China, and many of them are gay, and they're just like, yeah, in China they can just like hold hands and do things and grab each other's butts and whatever, just be openly gay, and they don't have to worry, versus if they were back in Egypt, for example, like, you know, life would be like a struggle. So I mean, I think these things are of course fluid. I mean, these societies are, I mean, we all have hope that societies will become more open and accepting, and but I think for many, in the midst of not being able to live openly there, or even, as you said, even if you're here in the US, you can still find safety among others, and it's just, I guess, maybe being careful. I don't know if that's a great answer, but I know that's just what, like, I've seen other people do.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I want to be transparent and say, you know, I'm a white middle-class American woman. So, not transparent as if you didn't know that. But what I mean when I say that is, I can't even imagine what that would be like, right? I mean, I can, but not really. Could I share something that might be helpful? I'm not even sure. Like, the weight of that must feel really heavy. I know some people choose to just have several different kinds of accounts with different names. I know people that intentionally, you know, block anyone from their family or people that might know their family. I mean, those kinds of strategies, but it takes work, and it shouldn't have to be that way. You should just get to be you and be out, right? And it's just not. So, yeah. Thanks for coming, you guys. Yeah.